And welcome back to more political chatter. In this video, we will be talking about the 2028 presidential election. I've only made one or two videos about this 2028 election, but it is honestly worth talking about heading into the 2024 election just because of how chaotic it is sure to be. I mean, there is no doubt that this will not be anything like 2024. In 2024, we had a handful of candidates. That's it. I mean, on the Democratic side, you have an incumbent president. We were lucky to even get the three challengers that Biden at least once had: Kennedy, Williamson, and Dean Phillips. And then on the Republican side, even though they don't have an incumbent president, trying to get renominated, there were still very few. In comparison to, previous primaries, there were very few candidates. Notable candidates, you only had who? Tim Scott, Ron DeSantis, and Nikki Haley. You had about three, and Mike Pence, of course. You had about four, maybe five if you count Chris Christie or whoever. You only had about four or five only four serious viable candidates, at least when they announced running for president, which is very unlikely. I mean, if you go back in time, and in 2020, there was, of course, that chaotic Democratic primary where there were just so many candidates, and it's for good reason. I mean, they had an unpopular Republican president who was very prone to losing re-election, and you had a wide field of Democrats who wanted to take his spot. There was no incumbent in the Democratic primary, of course. We didn't have any incumbent president. We didn't have any former president. So this left the field wide open. So many, in fact, a historic number of major candidates jumped into the race. A former Vice President, Joe Biden, many senators, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Michael Bennet, just to name a few. You had governors and former governors. I guess there weren't that many governors. But the point is, you just had a historic amount of candidates, and for good reason. They all wanted to replace Donald Trump. So that led to this many candidates running for president, from Tim Ryan to Beto O'Rourke to Steve Bullock to Joe Biden to Tulsi Gabbard. You had such a wide field of candidates put their a hat into the ring. That's the phrase. And then not to mention the 2016 Republican primary. You also had an enormous amount of candidates. Of course, you had everyone from Donald Trump to John Kasich, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. You also, at this time in 2016, you had a historic amount of candidates. So in this day and age, we see a lot, always, election after election, historic number of candidates enter the primaries. There is probably a multitude of reasons for that. Maybe politicians are more greedy these days. Maybe, maybe people want more fame and attention, and they are more self-centered. Or maybe it's a good thing you look at it. Maybe you see that the party bosses, the smoke-filled room doesn't just decide the candidate and put up one candidate. Maybe so many candidates is a sign that the people really get to decide instead of these party insiders. So however you want to look at it, election after election in this day and age, in this era, we have tons of presidential candidates in primaries where there is no incumbent. That is, except for 2024, and that is what makes it so interesting. Of course, in this primary, we have a former president of the United States, Donald Trump. So even though he isn't the incumbent, he was in many ways treated as the incumbent president, and his lead in poll after poll, he never lost. He only lost like one or two or three polls at this one certain time to Ron DeSantis, but Trump really never lost his lead in the Republican primary. He always crushed his candidates in polls and results. I mean, Iowa, it was Trump got 51%, and DeSantis came in second place at 22%. Just an absolute dominant lead. South Carolina is in 2 days, the South Carolina primary. Trump is going to crush Haley probably by around 30%. Nationwide, it's currently 85 to 15. Trump to Haley. So you can see this grip he has on the Republican primary. And this ultimately caused not very many candidates to jump in at all. But 2028 will be completely different. In 2028, it is a new era of American politics. This era that the American people have been waiting for now for about 8 years. We will not have Donald Trump running for president. We will not have Joe Biden running for president. Neither of them will really at all be involved in politics, and that is because of their age. Biden in 2028, 4 years from now, will be 85 years old. Donald Trump will be 81 years old, the age that Biden is right now. So, it will be historic. I mean, it's, there's always after a few elections you run out of incumbents, right? It's just set, it's just bound to happen. Is you eventually there is an election coming up where there will be no incumbent, and 2028 is that year. Donald Trump is done. Joe Biden is done, and likely, definitely for Joe Biden, but in many ways, Donald Trump, of course, this depends on who wins the presidency in 2024, but but their legacy is kind of lost a lot. Not necessarily because of how they're disliked in their party, but just because of this vast, wide field of candidates we will see in 2028. So it is already starting, and that's why I'm making this video. Just today, I think. No, yes, just today, Ron DeSantis apparently said in a phone call with supporters and volunteers of his, former 2024 campaign that he is really considering a 2028 run. Just today, Jared Polis, the governor of Colorado, says he will not rule out a 2028 run. So these are just two examples I brought up because it just happened today. I mean, the 2028 election is what's the word? Not coming up quickly, but already taking shape. I mean, it is happening quickly, day by day. We already have two governors, one very little known. I mean, you can just see how this 2028 primary will likely replicate that of 2020, with little known candidates like Jared Polis representing John Delaney, right, in 2020, running. And it will probably exceed the number of candidates of 2020 and 2016 and all other elections because it is a big opportunity. And again, this of course does matter who wins the 2024 election because on the Democratic side we do have Kamala Harris, who is the vice president and who could naturally kind of take the throne of the Democratic nomination. Or if Biden loses in 2024, which is more likely, then, that Biden-Harris administration, the Democrats might completely move on from that. And it could be, Harris could run again, but then it is a wide open field. So amazingly, there is actually already a draft article for the 2028 presidential election. It has not been published yet. But this just gives you a scope of how chaotic these primaries could be. And the thing is with 2028, it's for both parties. Both parties could have an absolutely chaotic time nominating their candidate. And that is not like something we have seen in the past. Of course, in 2016, the Democrats kind of, gave the throne to Hillary Clinton because she was Secretary of State, because she did have a very long history in politics, and Bernie Sanders was too progressive for the Democratic establishment. And then in 2020, of course, Donald Trump was the incumbent Republican, so he naturally, easily became that Republican nominee. And then in 2024, for the Democrats, they of course had Joe Biden as the incumbent, and he naturally became, or is becoming, the Democratic nominee. So, but in 2028, it's going to be so much different because we have no incumbent on either side. So the whole scope of what we know about elections right now regarding Donald Trump and Joe Biden and their age and just the nasty attacks on each other and how much they hate each other and the quote unquote lesser of two evils. That's what this 2024 election will come down to, is who voters hate less, right, than the other. But in 2028, voters will have a real choice in the primary. And really, it could be any one of these people. It could be someone not even on this list, as for the matchup heading into 2028. So, just my thoughts currently on 2028, who I think stand out as real possible picks that the Democrats could put up. Um, of course, I of course, again, it depends if Biden wins re-election, but I'm just going to assume not as for right now because it's likely that he doesn't. But a lot of people like to talk about Andy Bashir, but he's really just not that well known across the country. But someone like Pete Buttigieg, who really got his name out there during 2020, serves in the Biden administration. He now has a better record. A lot of people worried about his record in 2020, but now he has that record. Um, I think that obviously Kamala Harris could be a contender in 2028 just because, following after the Biden era, she could become that natural successor, for the Democrats, someone that they could put up. I actually think that Ro Khanna could surprise a lot of people. A lot of younger progressives like him could, put him up as a major contender. And I think that Gavin Newsom is someone that people know, that the establishment loves, that could get a lot of money quickly, and really someone that could run a good, strong campaign, and I'm sure he knows how to do it. He would have a good team. I think that Alexandria, Alexandria, why did that sound so weird? Alexandria, sorry, there it is. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, U.S. Representative from New York, AOC, of course, has been talked about as a potential presidential contender for so many years now, and a lot of people say 2028 is her time. I think that she could be a very major contender, someone that could lead the progressive movement into 2028, as Bernie Sanders is probably not going to run again this year. And then finally, just because of his huge war chest of cash, I think that Pritzker, and the media loves to talk about how Pritzker could be a contender. I'm not so sure about his name recognition. I don't think that really a lot of people know who he is. But if he has a lot of money and a good team, I think that he could be considered a major contender. And I mean, Warren would, but I don't think that she runs. To be honest, I really don't. She'd be quite old. And then Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, a lot of people like her. Her only struggle would be name recognition, though. And then as for the Republicans, so overview, I think that this Democratic primary, we could see a contest between Buttigieg, Harris, and Newsom and AOC mainly. Those four, I think, could battle it out. And then I think that Ro Khanna could be thrown in there, along with J.B. Pritzker and Whitmer, and yeah, that was it. But I'm not just saying those are the only people that I think will run. I think that so many people will run. Like more than 2020. I think that we could see virtually all of these people run. With the exception of obviously a few. Kathy Hochul, probably not. Mitch Landrieu, probably not. Phil Murphy, I don't know where people are getting that from. But again, so chaotic. As for the Republicans, two have already, quote-unquote, expressed interest, according to Wikipedia editors, that being Ted Cruz and Tim Scott, both of which I do think definitely run. So what matters so much in 2024 regarding 2028 is who Trump picks as his VP. It could be Tim Scott. It could be Elise Stefanik. It could be um, Kristi Noem. It could possibly be Vivek Ramaswamy, possibly Tulsi Gabbard. It could be a few people, but and the difference between Democrats and Republicans is Biden won't have all that much influence, right, on the Democrats. I mean, he is done. He by 2025 or 2028, I'm sorry, he will probably barely even be able to speak. But Trump still has a huge grip on the Republican Party, and I think that in 2028 he still will. Amazingly, I think that Trump will still have so much influence on so many people. I mean, remember, he got so many people to register Republican. I mean, whatever. So, whoever he picks as vice president in 2024 naturally becomes a major contender in 2028. So I think that it could be Tim Scott. Tim Scott is really wanting that job. I mean, especially if they're elected in November, right? But even if they're not. So Tim Scott, I think, runs. Ted Cruz, I think, runs just because he has major presidential ambitions. Other contenders, like, serious contenders, I think that Liz Cheney does run. Well, no, I don't. Sorry. Scratch that. But I do think that DeSantis runs. He has, like Ted Cruz, he has presidential ambitions. He has political ambitions in general. And quite a few, I think that we could see quite a few 2024 candidates run at just the Republicans. I mean, a lot just ran in 2024 just to get their name out there for 2028. That being Nikki Haley. That's why she's staying in the race, seeming like a fighter, being that last candidate before Trump wins, right? And then naturally heading into 2028 as that front runner, whatever. So Nikki Haley, I think, will run again. I think that Ron DeSantis will run again. I think that Vivek Ramaswamy will run again. All of those people, I think that Tim Scott runs again. All of those people being serious contenders for that nomination. I think that Kristi Noem runs regardless if she is picked for VP. And she could be picked for VP. She'd be sort of a major contender. Yeah, she probably would. I think that we don't see Trump run again. I hope not. And then whether or not Trump Jr. runs is big, but I don't think he does. I don't think that he really wants that job. I think, he's kind of young for it. I mean, I don't know if he's ready for that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think that he has shown enough to prove or to show that he has done enough to show that he actually wants that job. So there are a few who I think will run. But the Democrats have a much stronger bench. I mean, Biden is the weakest Democrat that the Democrats could put up, but they're putting him up anyway. And heading into 2028, when, Democrats can run if they want, they don't have to wait for Biden to step aside, they have a strong bench. The Republicans, unless Biden wins re-election, and they're so unpopular, the Republicans not looking good for 2028 as of now, especially when you look at their bench. We have a lot of Trumpian candidates, and as we have seen from election after election, Trump Republicans don't do well unless they're Donald Trump, right? Those radical, very conservative Trump wannabes, they don't do good. Only Trump does. Only Trump himself does. So thank you all for watching this video. Make sure you all subscribe, and I will see you all later.